I remember that day like it happened just yesterday. A birthday that should have been full of joy, laughter, and love turned into the moment my entire world came crashing down. My name is Julieta Johnson, and I'm 72 years old. For most of my life, I poured everything I had into my family. My daughter, Rebecca, was my everything. She's the only child I have, and I thought as long as I was alive, I would do anything for her. That's why, on her birthday, I wanted to surprise her with something special. I bought a $200 chocolate cake with fresh strawberries, her favorite since childhood. I arrived early, hoping to see her smile when she opened the door. I knocked, holding the cake in my hands, ready to celebrate her day. But when the door swung open, the expression I saw on her face wasn't the joy I expected. It was something else. Annoyance. She looked at me, not with love or warmth, but with a sense of irritation that I couldn't understand. "Oh, it's you," she said, her voice flat, as if my presence was an inconvenience. I stood there, frozen for a moment, trying to make sense of it. "Happy birthday, sweetheart," I said, forcing a smile, trying to act as if everything was fine. I held the cake out to her. "I brought you your favorite chocolate cake with strawberries, just like when you were a kid." Rebecca sighed deeply, like it was a burden to her. "Mom, we need to talk," she said dryly, letting me inside without even thanking me for the cake. As I stepped into her house, into the beautiful home that I had helped pay for, a house that I had fully financed when she and David got married, I felt a strange knot in my stomach. This house, this life they had, it had come from me. $50,000 of my savings, money I had saved penny by penny after working double shifts for 40 years as a nurse. I sat down in the living room, still holding the cake, now feeling like an outsider in my own daughter's home. Rebecca sat across from me, her arms crossed, her face unreadable. The woman I had raised, the daughter I had given everything to, was now a stranger. "Mom," she started, her voice colder than I had ever heard it. "I've been thinking a lot about birthdays, about presents, and about what would truly make me happy." She looked me in the eye, and I saw something in her gaze that sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't love. It wasn't even the familiar frustration. It was pure indifference, and worse, contempt. "The one thing I would love most as a birthday gift," she said, taking her time with each word, savoring the pain she was about to inflict, "is for you to just die." The world seemed to stop. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. The words she spoke were too much to process. My daughter, my only child, had just wished for my death on her birthday. "What? What did you just say?" I managed to whisper, feeling tears welling up in my eyes. "You heard me," Rebecca responded, her voice as cold as ice. "I'm tired of you, Mom. Tired of your constant calls, your surprise visits, of you always being here bothering me. My life would be so much easier if you would just disappear." My hands were shaking uncontrollably. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After all I had done for her, after all the sacrifices, this is what I got in return. I stood up slowly, my legs weak, the weight of her words sinking in like a stone in my chest. I turned toward the door, unable to stay in this house any longer. I had no words to speak. I didn't know how to process the pain, the disbelief. As I walked out, the cake in my hands felt like an insult. I couldn't believe the situation I was in. The daughter I had raised, the one I had given everything for, was rejecting me in the cruelest way possible. I drove back to my small apartment, my hands still trembling, my heart breaking. I thought back to all the things I had done for her. When she was 3 and got pneumonia, I worked triple shifts at the hospital to pay for her medicine. I sold my mother's jewelry to afford $200 in antibiotics when insurance wouldn't cover it. When she turned 16 and wanted to go to prom, I worked weekends for months to buy her the $800 pink dress she dreamed of. I remembered the sparkle in her eyes when she tried it on and how she hugged me tightly, telling me I was the best mom in the world. But now, all that love, all that sacrifice had turned into nothing more than a burden for her. The days that followed were unbearable. The pain of Rebecca's words lingered in my heart like a heavy fog. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't focus. It felt like my entire world had shifted, and I was left standing on the edge of something I didn't understand. I kept replaying the conversation in my mind, trying to make sense of it. How could the person I loved more than anyone else in the world, the one I sacrificed everything for, say something so cruel? But as much as it hurt, I realized something. I had given too much of myself to Rebecca and to my family, and in return, I had been left empty. I wasn't just exhausted, I was invisible. At 72, I had spent my entire life living for others, living to please, to help, to love. But what about me? What about my dreams? What about my happiness? I knew I couldn't go on like this. I didn't want to live in the shadow of someone who didn't appreciate me. That's when the thought hit me. It was time for me to take control of my life. For the first time, I realized that my happiness wasn't tied to anyone else's approval. I was the one who could change my story. I didn't need to be the martyr anymore, and that's when I made the decision. I wasn't going to stay in this place, in this life where I was being drained. I needed to break free. I needed to start over. I thought about what it would take to live for myself, to finally stop living in the wake of other people's expectations. And then it hit me. I would go to Switzerland. Switzerland wasn't just a place on a map. It was a symbol of everything I had been longing for. It was the freedom to be me. It was a chance to start over, to find peace, to find purpose. So I packed my things, booked my flight, and without a second thought, I left. I arrived in Zurich with nothing but a suitcase and a heart full of both fear and excitement. The city was beautiful, peaceful, and completely different from the chaotic life I had left behind. I rented a small apartment by a lovely park with windows that overlooked a serene lake. It was quiet. It was exactly what I needed. At first, it felt strange. I had never been alone in this way, not for this long, and certainly not without the constant demands of my family. But as the days passed, I began to realize something. I didn't need to be anyone's caretaker anymore. I didn't need to be the person who always fixed things for others. I didn't have to say yes to every request. For the first time in my life, I could say no without guilt, and it felt liberating. I started taking classes to learn German. I joined local groups for seniors, and I met people who had lived their own journeys, people who had found peace in their later years, just like I was starting to. I even started painting. It was a hobby I'd never had time for, but now, with all this free time, I realized how much I loved creating. It was a form of self-expression I had never explored before. Every morning, I walked by the lake, the calm water reflecting the mountains. The air was fresh, the sun bright, and for the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I had settled into my new life, but something still lingered in my heart. The past wasn't easy to forget, and Rebecca's words still echoed in my mind. I had cut ties, but I still wondered, did she ever think about me? Did she ever regret what she said? And then, one day my phone rang. It was Rebecca. My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't heard from her in weeks. Her voice was hesitant, but there was something different about it this time. It wasn't filled with anger or frustration. It was softer, more vulnerable. "Mom," she said, her voice cracking, "can we talk?" For a moment, I couldn't respond. What could I possibly say? After everything that had happened, I didn't know if I had it in me to go back. But then she spoke again, and I heard something that made my heart ache. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I don't know what came over me. I've been thinking a lot about what I said to you. I was so wrong, and I hate myself for it. Please forgive me." I didn't say anything at first. The silence was heavy. But it wasn't filled with anger anymore. It was filled with regret, with sorrow. Rebecca continued, I never realized how much you sacrificed for me. I've taken you for granted my whole life, and I don't know how to fix it, but I want to try, please. I just want to make it right. I listened to her words, and for the first time, I realized something. She was finally seeing me for who I was. Not just her mother, not just the person who had always been there to clean up her mess, but a woman with her own life, her own needs, her own dreams. And I knew that this was a moment of change, for both of us, but I wasn't ready to go back. I wasn't ready to pick up where we left off. I had made my decision, and while I would always love her, I had to live my life for me now. I didn't expect Rebecca's apology to change anything, but it did give me something unexpected. Closure. The years of emotional turmoil, of constantly bending and breaking for her, were finally starting to feel like they were behind me. I could breathe again. I wasn't sure what the future would hold, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done living my life in the shadows of others. After Rebecca's call, I allowed myself to feel peace, something I hadn't felt in years. My days were no longer filled with guilt or worry about disappointing anyone. I didn't have to answer to anyone. For the first time, I was able to focus on myself and what made me happy. I spent my days exploring Zurich, visiting museums, wandering through parks, and sometimes just sitting by the lake. The quiet moments were mine to enjoy. I had time to think, reflect, and truly understand what it meant to live for myself. It was a gift I hadn't even known I needed until now. I also made new friends, people who accepted me for who I was. They didn't expect anything from me, and that was a refreshing change. I joined a local book club and met a group of wonderful women who were in similar stages of life, finding their own paths, learning to live fully at any age. It was inspiring. One of the most powerful things I did was take a painting class. I had always loved art, but never had time for it. Now, I could express myself through colors and shapes, a form of release I had been longing for. It felt good to pick up a paintbrush again, to create something beautiful just for the sake of creating. I knew I was still healing. I knew it would take time, but each day in Switzerland I felt stronger, more confident, and more at peace with who I was. A few months had passed since my decision to leave everything behind, and I was beginning to feel like I had truly built something for myself. But then one afternoon, I received an unexpected call from my dear neighbor, Elvira. "Julieta, you need to hear this," she said, her voice filled with urgency. "Rebecca came by today. She was crying, asking me if I knew where you were. She told me she was sorry and that she didn't know how to make things right with you." My heart sank. A part of me wanted to be angry at her, angry for making me feel guilty for so long, angry for all the years of emotional manipulation. But another part of me felt a strange sense of relief. She was finally beginning to understand. But even then, I couldn't bring myself to go back to that place. "I don't want to go back, Elvira," I said, my voice steady but firm. "I can't. I've come too far to turn back now." But hearing that she's starting to realize what she's lost, it's enough. It's all I need. Elvira nodded. "I understand, Julieta. You've done enough. You deserve peace now." I knew she was right. I had done all I could for Rebecca, but it was time for me to take care of myself. I didn't want to go back to the life I had known before, constantly being the one to hold everything together, sacrificing my own happiness for the sake of others. With each passing day, I felt more and more confident in my decision. I wasn't just living for myself in a selfish way. I was learning what it meant to truly care for myself, to prioritize my own well-being without guilt or shame. It wasn't always easy. There were moments when I missed my family, when I thought about the years I had spent giving everything to Rebecca and David, and the emptiness I felt. But those moments were fewer and farther between. The life I was building for myself was far more rewarding than I ever could have imagined. One day, I sat in a cafe by the lake watching people stroll by. It was a typical peaceful afternoon in Zurich. As I sipped my coffee, I reflected on how far I had come. I had reclaimed my life, and now I was doing things I had never dreamed of, things that brought me joy, things that made me feel alive again. I thought back to my first few days in Switzerland, when everything felt so foreign. I had felt lost, unsure, but now everything felt natural. The city, the people, the calmness of my days, it all felt like a new beginning. And most importantly, I realized that I wasn't alone. I had friends, I had a new purpose, and I had finally found the courage to live my life on my terms. It had been about 6 months since I'd arrived in Switzerland, and I had fully settled into my new life. One day, I received a letter from my grandchildren. It had been a while since I heard from them, and I wasn't sure what to expect. But when I opened it, tears filled my eyes. The letter was from Liam and Lily, the twins. The same twins who had been so little when I last saw them. Now old enough to write and express their own thoughts, they had written a beautiful, heartfelt letter, filled with drawings of me in the Swiss mountains, looking happy and at peace. The letter read, "Dear Grandma Julieta, we miss you so much. We know Mommy said you're gone, but we want you to know that we still love you and we hope you're happy. We love when you come to see us, and we hope we can see you again soon. We hope you're doing okay, Grandma. We love you and we miss you. Liam and Lily." I was overwhelmed. Even after everything that had happened, these children, my grandchildren, still loved me. They still remembered me. I wasn't just some distant memory to them. I was still a part of their lives. The letter from Liam and Lily brought unexpected warmth to my heart. In that moment, I realized that despite everything that had transpired, there was still love in my life. Real, unconditional love from my grandchildren. Even though I had cut ties with Rebecca, I hadn't lost the ability to love and be loved. I felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that while I might never be the mother or grandmother they wanted me to be before, I still had a place in their hearts. In the weeks that followed, I wrote back to them. I couldn't promise them that I would return, but I could assure them that I loved them deeply, and that one day, when they were old enough, they could visit me in Switzerland if they wished. The thought of seeing them again one day filled me with hope. I also started to consider the future differently. I had spent so many years living for others, making sure they were happy, making sure they were taken care of. But now I was learning to live for myself, and for the first time, it felt good. I wasn't tied to anyone else's expectations, and I was finally able to breathe. Switzerland had become more than just a place to start over. It had become a sanctuary, a place where I could truly find myself. I spent more time outdoors, hiking in the beautiful mountains surrounding Zurich, exploring nature in a way I never had before. The air here was different. It was fresher, cleaner, and every deep breath I took felt like a new beginning. I knew I was lucky. I had the freedom to reinvent myself, to shape the second half of my life in a way that brought me peace. There was no more sacrifice, no more living for anyone else's happiness. I had learned the hard way that to truly love others, I first had to love myself. One chilly afternoon, while I was walking through the park near my apartment, I bumped into someone I hadn't expected to see. David, Rebecca's husband. He looked different, older, more worn out, and the weight of the years seemed to have taken a toll on him. When he saw me, his face softened with a mixture of surprise and guilt. "Julieta," he said quietly, almost as if he wasn't sure whether I would want to speak with him. "I didn't think I'd see you here." I felt a tightness in my chest. I hadn't expected this. Seeing him again brought back a rush of memories, both good and painful. Despite everything, David had always been a part of my life. He had been a good man at one time, and even now, I could see that there was regret in his eyes. I wasn't sure I should come, he continued. But I need to tell you something. I saw your interview online, and I've been thinking a lot about what happened, about how I stood by and let Rebecca treat you the way she did. I didn't say anything because I didn't want to upset her, but now looking back, I know I should have done more. I looked at him, feeling the weight of his words. Part of me wanted to stay angry at him, at both of them, but another part of me felt a strange sense of closure. For the first time, someone in my family was acknowledging the pain I had been through. You don't need to apologize, David, I said softly, my voice steady but kind. It's too late for that, but I appreciate you saying it. I don't need your apology. I just needed to hear it from someone. I needed to know that I wasn't invisible. David looked down at the ground, his face filled with sorrow. I can't undo the past, Julieta, but I want you to know that I realize now how much you did for all of us, and I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. There was a long silence between us, and I could feel my heart beginning to thaw. I didn't know if this conversation would change anything, but I knew it was a step forward, a step toward forgiveness. Not for David, but for me. I didn't need to hold on to the anger anymore. You've done enough, I said finally, offering him a small but sincere smile. We all have our own journey to take. I've made mine, and it's time for you to make yours too. A few weeks later, I received another message, this time from Rebecca. It wasn't a call or a text. It was a letter, an actual handwritten letter. I hadn't expected this, but there it was, sitting on my doorstep one morning. I opened it slowly, unsure of what to expect. As I read through her words, my heart began to ache once again. She had written a long apology, expressing regret for everything that had happened between us. She admitted that her actions had been selfish and that she had pushed me away because she was afraid of confronting her own weaknesses. She apologized for the years of emotional manipulation, for taking me for granted, and for telling me that I should die. But there was more than just an apology in her letter. There was a realization, one I had waited for, but never expected to come. I know I can never undo what I've done, Rebecca wrote, but I hope that one day you'll be able to forgive me. I've been selfish and I've hurt you more than I can ever explain. I miss you, Mom. I don't want to lose you. For a moment, I sat in silence, the letter in my hands. I wasn't sure what to feel. There was part of me that still longed for the daughter I once knew, the one who loved me unconditionally. But I also knew that the person who had written this letter wasn't the same person who had wished for my death. The past couldn't be erased, but maybe there was room for something new. I took a deep breath, folded the letter, and put it in my drawer. I wasn't ready to respond. Not yet. I had learned that forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. It means releasing the grip that past hurts have on you and freeing yourself from the chains of resentment. And that was what I was doing, letting go. As the months passed, I realized that I had come to a place of true peace. I had lived a life of sacrifice, of giving, of loving without limits. But now I was learning to love myself in a way I never had before. I wasn't the woman who had once lived for her family's happiness. I was someone new, a woman who had finally learned what it meant to live for herself. In Switzerland, I had found my peace, and in that peace, I had found the freedom to embrace the life I had always dreamed of. Thank you for following Julieta's journey. May her story inspire you to find the courage to live your own life on your own terms.